All right. We'll kick off our meeting since we're already after our time here. Hello, everyone, and good evening, esteemed fellow members of the Junior League of Houston. My name is Tiffany Ingram, and I am your group meetings coordinator for the 25-26 league year. On the behalf of the entire Training and Education Committee, we thank each of you for joining us for this group meeting. Before we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping items in order to receive credit for your attendance. We need you to be present for the entirety of this meeting. Zoom keeps track of how many minutes you are logged into this webinar, and that is the information that we use to give out credit. While we're here to primarily learn today, I know we're getting later in the league year and everyone needs those hours. So we just want to make sure that we're timely. Again, if your Zoom name is different than the name that Junior League of Houston knows you by, please let me know in the chat or by email so we can make sure that you get credit. I did see someone log in by their cell phone. So I just want to make sure we do get that credit for that person as well. Just please send me a separate message so I can make sure that you receive credit for your time here today. And then our team makes every effort to be timely, but please give us about 2 weeks to record and reflect your attendance on the member homepage. And if you don't see it by then, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at groupmeetings@jlh.org. Again, please make sure that you have your window on mute while our speaker is giving her presentation. We will save Q&A for the conclusion of our call. So, but if you think of a question and you don't want to forget it, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll work with Carol to make sure that it is answered at the closeout of our call today. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Karol Musher. She is the dynamic speech pathologist, and she has so much in store to talk about teaching our kids to read. So I had a great call with Carol earlier this week, and she's eager to have this discussion about something that's so near and dear to her heart and making sure our little ones know how to read. So tomorrow you will also receive a copy of some resources she put together for you all. So everyone who attends will be able to access that resource document as well. And I'll turn it over to Carol. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm very grateful that you are interested in this topic and that you are here tonight. Um, uh, I wanted to get a feeling. You know a little bit about me. I just retired from Texas Children's Hospital, where I was a speech language pathologist for, hold on, 54 years. I know that I can't believe I was 26 when I started working there, and had 3 children along the way, etc. And I have to say that it was an amazing experience. I had the most incredible run in the world, not only because of the wonderful people I met, the students, the kids, the parents, everyone. The hospital supported me, my work, and I learned a lot about language and reading. I started my career primarily working with kids who had oral language disorders, speech, communication, comprehension, expression, and when I came to Houston, also then included written languages, reading, spelling, writing. I worked with disorders, obviously, and we're not going to talk about that tonight. But as part of the work, I learned a lot about what has to be operative and in order for kids to learn these skills. And I spent a lot of time in schools, I still do, observing and reading the literature about language and reading. If you read the paper or listen on the news, you hear regularly how our reading skills, our language communication skills are deteriorating, way drop in people who read for pleasure, and also the negative, significantly negative effects of screens on all aspects of child development and communication. We're not going to talk about that. That's a real big soapbox for me, but I'm going to try to control myself tonight and not talk about that, because I want to talk more about how we can support. I don't know how many of you are parents, or older siblings, where you watched your younger siblings develop, or teachers, grandparents. But I'm going to try to gear it. I'm going to use the word children, and whatever context, whatever position you have in that process, please apply it. And do send questions to the chat box, and hopefully I'll be able to answer those as well. So let's get to the topic, which was build in Raman Veer. I don't know if Raman Veer's in the group tonight. I know she was my administrator for the last few years at Texas Children's, and that's how I got here. Is that after she and I had talked several times informally about language and reading, she said, "Wow, maybe." She was going to talk to someone in junior league and see if that could be one of the topics. And it always gives me pleasure to be able to communicate what I've learned over the years. So, although the title of this is How to Teach Children to Read, I'm going to confess that I am not planning to suggest you sit down at a table with flashcards, or with phonics books, or with whole language books, whatever, and formally teach reading. But I will provide for you recommendations based on my experience, for providing an environment, whatever that may be in whatever context, that continually, and that's a very important word, regularly exposes children to meaningful activities in everyday life and skills that are prerequisites or requirements, really, for becoming a good and lifelong reader. So we want this to stick. We wanted to continue to provide an individual with broad experiences throughout life. Now, the background knowledge for these prerequisites begin to be developed, get this, the day the child is born. In fact, there's some people who have done research and found that children, even in utero, are beginning to respond to sounds. I haven't done enough research in that area to be able to substantiate that or see it in my experience, but I certainly know that from day one, babies are learning. And so we used to think that babies were kind of blobby, that they just kind of hung out and looked around and things went over and in and out. And obviously some things do. However, we know for a fact that there's a lot of brain activity going on from day one, and that those first years of a child's life are absolutely critical. So teaching, as I said, begins with development of what we call nonverbal language. Think about that for a minute. Think of what nonverbal language might mean to you. If we were in a room, I'd call on you and ask you to tell me. But I'm so bad at computers that by the time I do that, it'll be time to stop. So Tiffany has been remarkable in walking me through a lot of this in terms of the technology. So the only, yet I'm telling you how important the language exposure is that parents present, but parents do not get training in how to do it. When people have babies, they get education in facilitating pregnancy, delivery, all kinds of, how to bathe your baby, how to help them with sleep routines. Nobody teaches you about language development. It's assumed that it's intuitive, and it is to some people. But I have to say that it's not intuitive to a lot of people. So we start with what we call nonverbal language. And here again, it means eye contact. And think of how much communication goes on without words. Um, Looking at someone's face to get a cue of how they're feeling, whether they're smiling, they're frowning. And this kind of communication is evident in babies, believe it or not, by the age of 2 to 3 months. They are already engaging visually and responding to nonverbal cues. And then it's a roller coaster from then. Um, so nonverbal is first, then by 12 to 18 months. Think how soon that is. But the parents just getting used to having a child. The children are already learning to understand words, actual words, their names, maybe their favorite toy, their lovey, whatever they call it. And soon thereafter, and simultaneously, they begin to use meaningful sounds, mama, dada, doggy. They may not say them clearly, and they don't say them clearly, but they are understood by parents and reinforced. And soon after this, as the nonverbal and the oral language are developing, we begin to teach the precursors for written language, meaning reading and spelling. So you have a hierarchy of the nonverbal, and they're all interacting spontaneously when provided with stimulation, and they're hierarchical, but they also develop across the board, across your life, basically, we hope. So we begin to teach the written language, which is directed toward recognizing and naming letters. You know, if you think of what the first time a child looks at letters, there's squiggles on a page, right? There, how anybody learns to read is beyond me. You think about a P, visualize a P, a B, a D, a Q, and a G. They all have what we call a stick and a bump. The bump goes one way, up or down, but they're different sounds. So, how a child ever figures out where the stick is and where the bump is, for a G and a Q, there's a little curly on the end of it, one way or another, but it's amazing. But they are beginning because we, as stimulators of language, are actually showing them these things. We're teaching them about sounds by rhyming, by singing alphabet songs. And fortunately, they don't judge our singing ability. So they just, go with the flow. And then they begin again to use sounds. They're spontaneously lying in their cribs, sitting in their car, saying, going, mama, mama. They're not calling mama at that point. But one day, mama goes, oh my gosh, they're calling me. She said my name, said my name. Well, they didn't really, but because they said mama, you reinforce it. The connections go, hey, wow, look at that. So they begin to understand that a combination of sounds makes words. So when I teach language development, to me, it's a miracle that it happens. It's a miracle that it happens at all, and that actually it is the oral language system, the communication of words, the comprehension of words is well established in a typical 5-year-old, with some, ups and downs, but a 5-year-old can generally talk his or her way out of anything. They really have amazing skills. They still have grammatic errors. He flied instead of he flew, so irregular past tenses. Mouses for mice, irregular formation of plurals. But for the most part, they've got their prepositions. And think of, you sit in a chair or do you sit on a chair? I mean, how they get all this straightened out. You get in back of someone or you get behind someone. So beside, I mean, there are all these kind of little innuendos. So right now you're building that pyramid here with the nonverbal, the verbal. So again, because infants begin to learn from the moment of the birth, parents need to stimulate them and all their senses, their hearing, their vision, their feel, their sensory kind of things, their smell, and we do it by, you smell that wonderful bread baking in the oven, all kinds of things like that. Yet again, parents have not had formal teaching in these areas, so that becomes our job. So let's do a short course here, an interactive course here, intensive, on what we can do to help children, to provide them with an optimal environment for learning, to understand and use oral language, and to then begin to read and write. I want to clarify that our conversation here includes both components of reading, which would be decoding, figuring out what those squiggles are, but decoding is only half the game. You then have to comprehend what you're reading. So decoding, which they start with early, is a means to an end. And how you help them develop the comprehension very much depends on their oral language stimulation, what they come to school with. COVID, we took a big hit with COVID in terms of what kids learned as the precursors. Everybody was at home, and there was tension. They didn't know how to use computers for teaching. But again, the problem is that we've held on to that a little on the long side, in my opinion. I don't know what that is. That something I should be responding to? Did you hear a beeping?
You
No.
did, but I think you can keep going. It's off now.
Okay, good, good, good. I just didn't know what was going on. Okay, so again, we are going to be looking both at how you teach both. Now, as Tiffany said, you are going to get a handout, I think, send out tomorrow, that will list for you a lot of the books that are my favorite books that I think are amazing for teaching a lot of the skills. There's a lot of controversy out there about political correctness, etc. I've given you two sources to look at for the current books that are very reputable. And then I've given you a lot of my classics that I love. And you have to evaluate them yourself and see if you're familiar with them. I would say when you read nursery rhymes, don't look into meaning so much. What we're doing with nursery rhymes is helping kids learn rhymes, which are important for learning to read. So we're not going to be talking about whether I think phonics or whole language or context is the best way. That we can do another time. If my only thing I can say about that is if there were one best way of teaching reading, we would all do it. It seems to be the answer will be a combination of factors, and that's the kind of thing that I'm going to, again, proceed at this point to talk to you about. So, all right, what are specific suggestions that I have to help kids acquire this gigantic constellation of knowledge that they need to become good readers and to instill a love of reading, which we hope will last a lifetime? Now, you may think they sound like common sense, okay? First of all, what I've learned over the years is that common sense is not common. That's number one. Number two, that when we're stressed by and caught up in today's lifestyle, we sometimes misplace our common sense. Um, there's so many demands on parents, grandparents, and teachers today that it's very easy to lose sight of these common activities, many of which are very easy to implement or fit into the daily routine and have been proven to be effective. But many of them have also been replaced by what I would call more elaborate formal classes than you might have had when you were growing up. If you want to, I mean, there are lists of places. There's for math, and I'm not going to comment on the quality or the importance of any of these, but the way you are learned, or I had a family recently who told me they went to a math tutoring company for their child to learn ordinal numbers. And my response, because I knew this family well, was, really? How did you learn ordinal numbers? Well, they both reminded me that they used them by playing on the playground with friends, where you said, I'm first, you're second, you're third. And next time I'll be first again, but you'll be second or third. Or that's what ordinal numbers are. So it was out on the playground playing, learning first, second, third, rather than having to go specialized somewhere to learn. And that's the kind of thing we unfortunately are doing now. And it's again because we're busy. We're very, very busy. So I'm going to try to provide some very, I'd say, again, common sense activities that fit into the day. So the general categories fall into one, being talk, talk, talk to your child. The second is read, read, read to them. Thirdly, provide them with opportunities through day to day experiences to develop strong vocabulary and extensive background knowledge and world knowledge to enhance their learning. So when you're walking by a park and there's an opportunity to give a little, or in your yard to scratch a little on the tree, and you see a little brown something come out, that's the best way to learn what sap is. There's all kinds of things you can do. And therefore, when you read a story in first or second grade about sap, that memory will come up and you'll know what the meaning of the sentence is. So and then of course, my fourth one is, because I can't control myself totally, is to minimize. I'm not saying eliminate after a child is maybe 6 or 7 or 8, maybe 10. Minimize and control screen time. Theirs and yours. Okay, enough at that point, but you can guess what else I would talk about next time. All right, they should also learn from structured opportunities like sports, being on sports teams, learning music in a little orchestra or band or choir, but those should not totally replace day-to-day activities, which provide spontaneous learning opportunities. Structured, rigid learning is not the same as contextual learning. Okay, let's talk about talk. This should begin the first time a baby is held. Obviously, babies are not going to understand any specific words they're hearing, but as you will recall from our discussion, that they will react to nonverbal cues of inflection and tone of voice and pitch. And for many of us, it's very common when you see a baby. My kids used to laugh at me because anytime I'd see a baby, oh, hi, you use that different voice, higher pitch, your intonation is up and down. Um, and all that is very useful because what they are learning when you're doing that is they're learning to listen and to pay attention, by the way, which our current kids are not doing as well as we would like them in many situations, and to associate intonations and sounds with meaning, and you're providing them with repetition, which is critical. And all this enables them to figure out that a combination of sounds that they hear represent, look, here's a ball, it's round, here's a ball, doggy, mommy, mommy, here's mommy, let's go bye-bye in the car. That's not baby talk. It's simplified. I'm not distorting the words. I'm using the real words. We do not need to use baby talk. We need to use intonation that will, but real hardcore words that will get their attention. Obviously, the way we talk to babies and the complexity of what we say will change, but don't hesitate to start early and do not stop. At first, you keep it simple and gradually elaborate, expand, narrate what you're doing. Okay, let's go get dressed. We're going to get dressed. We're going to put on your shoes. Here are your shoes. Then we're going to put on your pants, your shirt. Where's your shirt? And then we're going to go bye-bye in the car. Now, bye-bye is not a baby talk. That's acceptable baby talk. Okay? You're not distorting the word. And then you say, here's a car. It's mommy's car. There's daddy's car. We're going to go bye-bye in the car. That's what you're expanding. Narrate what you do. Sing simple songs, nursery rhymes. Model this to caretakers, because if you're not with them all day, and that's fine, make sure that those who are following the strategies that you advocate. Again, try to stay off your phones when you're doing these things. Phones are distracting. There's all this action that goes on that will take the attention of the child away from your face, from your movements to the telephone. Now, make talking part of a regular routine. It's not natural for everybody. Some of us are big talkers, and that's what we do all day long. But all of us can learn. I always say you can identify a speech pathologist at a grocery store, because what you do is you put your child in the basket and you talk about, let's put your legs through here and let's give you plenty of room, and you're talking their ear off. But then when you start to push that carriage, oh my goodness, you have the greatest language experience in the whole world. Think of the array of vocabulary in a grocery store, somewhere we all have to go sometimes. Some people are ordering in more than other times, but still once in a while, all of us go to a grocery store. And you talk about the colors. This is red pepper, yellow pepper, orange pepper. And this is a big melon. And this is a big green apple. And this is a smaller red apple. So colors, shapes. This is a big box and container. You hear, you're giving synonyms as you're talking. So you're already teaching the child variety of apples, different kinds of apples. Name it. This is salt. This has a smell, but this doesn't have a smell. So every time you're going to something like that. Now, it is true. When you take 3-year-olds to a grocery store, you're probably going to end up buying a few things that were not on your list. No doubt about that. And you may experience what I did. I remember when I was a young clinician and I would see children have a tantrum in the grocery store. What would I say to myself? My kids are never going to do that. Well, guess what? They did. And the first time they did it, I remember thinking, I am so sorry I had those thoughts. But the fact is, taking them to a grocery store is a stimulating experience. Top shelf, bottom shelf, middle shelf. So many words you can teach them. There are a lot, every other routine activity, mealtime, wow. Open your mouth, close your mouth. Mmm, this is yummy. Does it taste sweet? Does it say sour? This is apple, and this is apple sauce. We mash this up, and that's how we get. You are teaching them life experiences. You're teaching them adjectives, bathing them, dressing them, body parts, talking about splashing them with water. Oh, close your eyes, and here's the soap, and it's going to get all bubbly on you. We're going to rinse it off. We're going to wash it off. Cleaning up after meals, dishwasher. Ooh, great. Let's take it off the table, put it in the dishwasher. This is a fork. Let's face the fork down or up, whatever your method is. Be careful with a knife. Let's put it in and down, facing down, so no one will get cut. And putting and counting how many. We have 4 people in our family. Let's see if we have 4 plates in there. When you get in the car, again, the car seat, let's buckle it up. And then all the cars. You may hate traffic, but it's a great learning experience. When you talk about, oh, there's a big truck, there's a small truck, there's a yellow truck, and look at that one. That has an open back. And then we can put all the stuff in there that, or the person who it comes to mow our lawn, or daddy, or whoever, mommy. These are the kinds of things we can put in the back of a truck that you can't put in if you don't have the back open like that. That kind of logical thinking. You talk about a red light, green light. Red light means stop. Yellow light means slow down and look. And green light means we can go. But let's look both ways. You can talk about all of these things regularly without going with while you're doing your routines. Up, you can hear a siren, and then you can talk about what kind of vehicles, that's a good word, have sirens. And then when you go home and you see the little cars you have at home, you remind the child, this is what made that siren. Construction, they love construction vehicles. We don't on the street, but they do. So that's your time to talk about them. A train, a choo-choo train going by. I remember my eldest grandson, who's now 28, used to love trains. And we'd count the trains and the stopping and the going back, and each one was a car, but that's different from the car that you're in now. You're getting ahead of this. So all of this, the playground. Who do you think we're going to see at the playground? Your friend will be there. Here's a slide. Here's a seesaw. Oh, I don't know if they have seesaws anymore because they probably are considered to be dangerous now. But you have slides, you have swings. Talk about those. Push you high, push you low. You have to share it. In a kitchen, your pots and pans, your appliances, all of those kinds of things. Let's put the ice cream in the freezer. We put the milk in the refrigerator to keep it cold, but we put the ice in the freezer. All this vocabulary is critical for reading words and for comprehending what you're reading, which is why we learn to read. An elevator. Every time I went up the elevator at Texas Children's, which was probably 3 days a week for 54 years, I would cringe when there would be a missing opportunity for teaching. Up, down, numbers. You see the numbers. What better way is there to learn to count backwards than if you're on 10? You go 10, 9, 8. Oh, we have to stop because this is where we get out. But then you go 8, 7, 6. Talking about all of those kinds of commonplace vocabulary that's so important. When you're going to the library, again, you talk about the books. You get a library card for a child as soon as the child is old enough to understand that that's a precious thing. And you can keep it in a special place in the room, in the child's room, so that every time you go, you take it and you show them how to check out a book. You sit there and look at it with them together to choose the book. Um, all of these kinds of activities. Watch their body language and use that as a prompt. If they're staring at something, that's an opportunity for you to discuss it. An escalator, it's stairs that go up and the stairs that go down, but you have to hold on and you have to know when to stop. And why do we use an escalator instead of stairs? What's the difference? So you can talk about that, not with flashcards, not with books. You can reinforce them, but you do it by talking. So I hope there will be some questions about that coming in. But let's move, because our time is moving, to read. Just as I said, talk, 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 read, read, read. Reading is the written word of what people say. So it's basically a superimposition of a graphic system of squiggles on an auditory system. We are making a letter to stand for a sound, and we're combining those sounds. Here's a k, here's a a, and here's a t. And guess what? If you put it cat, if you combine them, it becomes cat. So we also learn that we can go t, a, p, but you change the order of those sounds, same sounds, different order, different word, right? Okay. So, and then gradually we learn rules for reading, and English is not easy. We teach that when you have I don't know if you remember, the silent E rule at the end of a word makes the previous vowel say its name, okay? Okay, it works for a lot of words, but what about the word have? Doesn't work for that one, right? You just have to memorize that one. So we have we have rules and then we have exceptions. But the practice, if they know language, if they've learned language through oral communication at home and at school and on the playground, when they come to the word HAVE and they've learned how to read they and they don't know have, they might say have, a cat, then they go, wait a minute, doesn't sound right. And they'll go back and read it as have, because they know that's what it should be based on the structure they've learned in their heads by language. Okay? So the precursor for learning to read is a strong oral language basis. So now we come to reading. And again, as is true with talking, we begin to read to kids very early. They do not know what you're saying, a lot of it. Obviously, the choice of books is very different, but just know that reading stimulates imagination, definitely vocabulary, and reasoning. When they hear stories, they begin to imagine or visualize in their minds and to comprehend well. You have to have the vocabulary to make it meaningful, to be able to predict and to associate with experience. If you have experienced SAP, then when you read about it, you go, oh, I know where that is, where that's from, and I know what that means. But a good reader visualizes. You imagine in your head, and that's why a lot of good readers do not like to go see movies that they've read a book about, because you don't want anybody to mess with your visions of who those characters were. But we foster imagination by asking questions when we read. What do you think he looks like? What color hair do you think he has? And what is he wearing? It's not in the book, but it's the kind of thing that will help comprehension. and retention and sustain attention. So, sustain memory too. Um, we want to begin to predict what do you think's going to happen next. Um, Research has clearly shown that a positive relationship between growing up with books and reading aloud, having them just in your bookcase won't do it. And later language development is correlates positively with later school success and life success. Differences in brain activity depend on how much children have been read to aloud or at appropriate levels. If a book is too long, too hard, too much on the page at a certain age, they're not going to be interested. A lot of times parents will tell me they run around when I read to them and I don't think they're paying attention. So we talk about what books are you reading to them. So again, we want to read from infancy to as long as they will allow you to, even after they're reading themselves, I would say, because kids begin to read books, but parents can read to and with them books that are at a higher level than they're able to decode themselves and promote vocabulary, imagination, etc. When we talk about appropriate levels, we're talking somewhat about interest. I mean, I hate to be a sexist, but little boys prefer books about cars and trains, and they just do. I tried it with my girls to give them books with cars, and they tolerated it, but they preferred other kinds of books. So I do think there's something to that's just the way it is. But if you can figure out if they like a particular character, then get a book about that. But you start out with simple board books, where it's a board book with one picture of an apple, let's say. The apple, and here's the real apple over here, apple, and you show them how it goes, and you say, look, there's a stem on the apple. Show me the peel. Then we're going to peel our apple later. Let's slice the apple, but we can't slice this one because it's a picture, and it's red. We have red apples, but we also have other apples, other color of apples. You show them a kitty cat. So yes, kitty cat, that's important, but also whiskers, all kinds of things. You point to their body parts. They shouldn't be too busy, the pictures at the beginning. Very simple. And this I have in my handout to you. You want it to be at their cognitive level. Let me say that reading chapter books or long books has become a status symbol to parents, particularly. When I see kindergartners walking around with Harry Potter, I feel a little sad about that, because maybe these kids can decode the words, but I don't think they can really understand what's going on. And then when you want to introduce that book to them when they're in second or third or fourth grade, they'll say, I already read it, and they don't want to read it again. So I think we really shouldn't hothouse. We should look at appropriate books, and your librarian, if your child's in school, the school librarian knows the books that are for pre-K or whatever. The regular librarian does, your child's classroom teacher, or you might ask grandma to pull out a book that was your book when you were that age. Help them learn to turn pages, follow along so that they can see you go, if you're reading English, from left to right. When you get to the end of the page, go to the top of the next page, turn the page. That's how they learn these things. Show them the title. This is the name of the book. We call it the title of the book. Let's look at the outside cover and see, can we guess what it's about based on the cover? We all rely on context cues sometimes, right? Well, this is the time to begin to do it. Let me just say, I think nursery rhymes are great. Um, we talk about learning phonologic awareness for reading, right? Phonologic awareness is rhyming. It basically rhyming. We're saying mat, cat, bat, rat. We're changing an initial sound to produce a new word that has the second and third sound the same. That's what we mean with phonologic awareness. And that's what we're using very well now in learning to read early on. So giving kids a head start with, again, some parents object to nursery rhymes thinking they're violent. I will tell you, my feeling is kids easily differentiate between reality and fantasy. And so I think the pros outweigh the possible cons. But again, that becomes your decision. There's definitely new rhyming books that are in these references that I gave you. Use different voices, imitate sounds. Kids love repetition. And the other thing is you must model reading at your home. If they see parents reading, they will model it. Make reading a priority, special, cozy, consistent, a special treat. There should be a routine for it. It should not be used as punishment by, well, I'm not going to read to you if you don't do this. Reading is a given. In your lap, cozy again, you point, they help you sound out books. Whenever you go anywhere, take books. When you leave the house, when you go to a restaurant or waiting in a doctor's office, hand them a book instead of a phone or a tablet or any kind of device. Take some crayons along too. You remember going to restaurants where they had color books and crayons, few and far between. There's still a few, but that's what they should be doing. Show them how to sound out words. In the car, play sound games. I'm thinking of a word that starts with k and ends with p. What word could that be? As much of that as you can do in an unstructured situation, I guarantee you we're going to develop better readers. They're going to come to school ready to learn formal reading. Stop to ask questions. Encourage them to ask questions. So the last thing is please limit that screen time. I can't not say that again. All right, I think this is when we need to stop. Is that correct?
It is.
Do we have questions?
Yeah, folks can start putting questions in the chat. We
Okay.
did ask, I asked, folks to kind of share whether or not they're parents or aunt to wonderful nieces and nephews or in
Yes.
the education sector. So we have a lot of parents on the call this evening. I am a parent also, so I love what you said about we are this stimulators of language. And I'm always constantly trying to I guess narrate our day, even though my
Good.
baby's only getting ready to be 8 months. But I think
Good.
one of the things folks I've seen on TikTok, and everybody's like, this lady's like, oh, I read 50 books a day to my kid.
No, no, no.
What's realistic? My question is, what's realistic to people
Oh,
who are working moms, people
no,
who are
not realistic. No.
what's a realistic amount of reading for early childhood? Should it be a new book every, how many books should folks be trying to
Kids
read? Is there a
love
goal?
repetition. They
Okay.
should have a little bookshelf in their room of their
Mm-hmm.
favorite books that they can pull out. This is the book they want to read tonight. And if they want to read the same book 5 nights in a row, good. That's perfect. They love that. And the way 50 books is too stressful for everybody and nobody's going to learn anything. I think that 15, 20 minutes, if you can, look, I remember making recommendations to people before I had kids where I would say to them, read 45 minutes with each child every night. Why, they didn't look at me and say, you don't know what you're talking about, because I didn't know. I knew that would be great, but who could do that?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
15 meaningful minutes of sitting on your lap. And if you have two kids that are close in age, you can read to two of them, and that's a good time to take turns. But no, board books with one picture, and until they're sick and tired of it, and until you have milked everything out of that, what you can learn or what you can teach, put it back on the shelf, and I guarantee you they'll go back to it sometime. But one that's similar, maybe has two pictures on a page, and then you go to one that may have three. And I have given specific book names, but I would say if you can have 15 to 20 minutes every whatever time works for you, before dinner, after dinner. After dinner is usually a nightmare. You're trying to get everybody to bed. Before dinner, you're trying to get dinner. But you find a time that is works for you. It should not be a stressful time. It should be time that is, look, being a parent can be stressful all day for lots of days, but carve out a time that this is a for you. And if you skip a day, fine. I mean, but the child will remind you if it's special to him or to her. Hey, mommy, what about reading, or goes, they will go get you a book. That's what you do. But no, not 50 books a day. If you can read half a book a day, that's great. If it's been done in a meaningful, relaxed, fun way, it has to be a pleasure to do for both of you.
Okay, and that brings us to our next question. Somebody shared many of the women in the league volunteer with children. So they would like to know what books could you maybe recommend to help lead through maybe games or activities that they could be leading as volunteers to help increase the vocabulary of the kids that they may be working with.
Okay, you will see those names of books on that sheet. You're going to have a
Mm-hmm.
whole list of nursery rhymes. You're going to have a list of early chapter books. You're going to have a list of just early books. The Eensy Weensy Spider, Humpty Dumpty. That's a rhyme. But the caterpillar. The one about the caterpillar. My favorite of all times was Are You My Mother? These are books you can read from 2 on. And again, they will not understand every book, every word, but there are books that I have specifically recommended that I think will answer this question.
Okay. Yes. And
And as I said, there are two websites. One is Reading Rockets, that is a wonderful website that tells you
mhm.
everything you want to know about reading. It's logical. It's not over the top one way or another. And then the Hazelin books every year. I don't remember how many books are chosen to be looked at as the best books of the year. And those are the more modern ones that are going to be more inclusive, more specifically directed toward diversity, etc. So you have the classics, which I have recommended, and which I'm sorry to say have almost been forgotten. Many of them, and they are still available. It's not that they're not. So please get those books if you're working with kids. I just want to compliment Junior League was part of came we were one of the places that Junior League came to our department, speech language learning, probably 30 years ago, and we always had a few Junior League members working with us, and it was the greatest gift we could have ever had. They were wonderful with the kids, wonderful patient with us, and were so helpful. All right, what other question?
Yeah. I think it's a couple people were just sharing what you just talked about in the chat as well for people who want to look it up right now. Um, what are your thoughts about um, using your phone? Oh, somebody said, is there anything else we should be doing besides reading, talking, limiting screen time to prepare our children to read before they are in kindergarten? Is
Okay,
this
why are we
possible?
rushing?
Okay.
Why are we rushing? They don't need to be reading chapter books before they're in kindergarten. I know that people are under the impression that schools that test for admission require
Mhm.
reading at the beginning of kindergarten. Um, I I don't think that's really true. I think they want to see kids are prepared. I think they want them to recognize the alphabet. They want them to be able to blend. If I say at, what is that word? They want them to pay attention during the story. They want them to be able to write their name. It doesn't have to be in calligraphy, but they want them to be able to write a little of their a few words to dictation. But that's all letter sounds. They are. I think we push kids so hard. I will say that when the largest number of referrals I had for many years for possible dyslexia were for 5 year olds. And, again, I always ask parents, how old were you how many of you in this room learned to read before you were 5? And there aren't many hands that go up. But how many of you were reading by the time you were 7 or 6? And all the hands go up. So we do have kids with learning disabilities, learning differences, and there's no doubt about that. And that was my area of specialty. But I think that if you do all the things, not you don't have to do every one, but many of the things that we talked about today in terms of getting kids to love reading, to guess about pictures, to be able to blend sounds just because you're going in the car and going, all right, at. What is that word? Sat. But if I change the ad to it, getting them to do that sort of thing of playing with sounds, I think that suffices. They do not, that to my knowledge, have to be reading fluently by the time they enter kindergarten. They should be familiar with print. They should know that
Mm-hmm.
letters
Mm-hmm.
represent sounds, and sounds you can take apart and put together to make words. They should recognize, and this is the other thing, as you're driving by, you show them where it says a name of a store. You go into a store that says exit, that says enter. Um, Whole words like that. They do like them to be able to realize that a series of letters makes a word. But I don't think they need to be reading before kindergarten.
Uh, and
Anybody can call me. I'm
mhm.
happy to give you my email or give them my email to contact me if they have any
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, and that's great. I think one of our other questions is how can, in your opinion, in your profession, how did you create a space that really generated a space for learning and growth mindset with parents and kids? I do think that um there is a lot of pressure from parents for kids to perform. But how did you kind of generate that growth mindset of like, we won't get everything today, but a safe learning environment where kids are able to grow? Like, how do you kind of cultivate that without making it to be so much pressure for kids to get everything right? I have a friend who her son is in kindergarten now, and I feel like she does boot camp on the weekends, like read that again, do that again, write
Oh,
your name again. But how can you create a space for loving to learn and that growth mindset for parents and for kids?
I think by providing life experiences, enjoyment, and rewarding learning, but not having unrealistic expectations. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I have given parents realistic books to read for children. Because when I started, I would just say, just read to them, and I'd see them in the waiting room reading a newspaper to a 5 year old. I mean, look, and there's some things that you can read, comics, etc. But I think you expose kids, you you make it fun. Learning should be fun. Now, I believe in expectations and I believe in boundaries. So I don't think all of life is fun. And I don't think, I think kids need to learn the word no and to have boundaries. I'm a very strong believer in that. But I think developmentally, if you look at what kids should be achieving, that's what you do and that's what you encourage. You always have books, you always have crayons and paper in the house. You have blocks, building blocks. You don't need 1,000 toys. You have blocks. You have things like that that they can tear down and start over again. You don't need a Lego set for every activity. There used to be one set of Legos and you could build a farm or you could bring a spaceship. Now it's here's a Lego set for spaceship. Here's a Lego. That
Mm-hmm.
takes away from creativity. So I think again, you learn a lot of this through experience, and I think you rely on your pediatrician's norms. There are realistic norms out there that if you feel so uptight about is your child achieving up to 11, up to where they should be or where should they be, that's what I do. But learning should be experiential. They should play on a playground. That's where you learn a lot of stuff. And you don't need to hover. My favorite book for raising kids is Blessings of a Skin Knee. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or read it,
Mm-hmm.
but the title tells it all because kids need to skin their knees in order to learn, to have experience of not to climb on that thing because it's dangerous. I mean, kids need to have resilience. They need to learn how to fend for themselves, but they have to learn about politeness and playing with groups. Open-ended play, I know, is harder because parents worry about their being outside by themselves. But if you have a parent watching and you can have a neighbor, you take turns doing that. It's a very important thing for kids to play a game and make up their own rules instead of always having a coach or a parent telling them what to do.
What to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
so
kids
so
need
very helpful. So
to
very
learn to
helpful.
entertain themselves. I mean, I hear kids all the time, it's play with me, play with me. Well, I will play with you, but right now have them help you cook dinner. That's the best. Stir this, don't give them a knife to slice the tomatoes. But there's a lot of things they can
Mm-hmm.
and should help with. Setting a table, they can do that. I mean, they
Yes.
can. So there are a lot of things, and all of us feel good when we've accomplished something. Praise them for it. I leave the
Mm-hmm.
academic pressure to the schools. I mean, I leave the formal teaching to the school, and at
Mm-hmm.
home, draw pictures, have fun, dot to dot books.
And
All
make
of
it
those
fun.
activity books that kids don't use anymore, where you color all the number fours with red and whatever, and you do dot to dot. Those teach fine motor skills. Too many of our kids are in occupational therapy, and the reason a lot of them are is because they never use their hands for
For
drawing,
things.
for
Mm-hmm.
coloring. They don't
And
do it
painting, things like
because
that.
why? They are on their screens. and they develop great muscles like this,
Yeah.
but they're not doing this. They're not sitting up and developing posture muscles by
Hmm.
coloring and cutting, those kinds of things. Those old fashioned things are very valuable. And I
Yes.
think if groups of parents could get together and reassure each other that we're doing the right thing. We want our kids to learn to their potential, but we don't want to stress them to the point that they're anxious about, oh my gosh, is it perfect? They don't have to do things perfectly at that age or ever.
Yes.
I mean, none of us,
Yeah. None of us are
all the
perfect. So
time.
we
You
are, and
can't
we
do
are all
everything.
lifelong learners.
Right.
And I appreciate you so much, Carol, for sharing your knowledge. The chat has been like, this is very helpful. There, folks are looking forward to your list that I will send out tomorrow to everyone who attended. That kind
Send
of
them my
gives.
email also. I'm
Yeah, I
happy
put your
to
email
answer.
in the chat, and
Yeah.
I will put it in the email to our participants this evening too, to be able to follow up with you directly. If you have any questions that maybe Carol didn't get to answer for you this evening, please don't hesitate to reach out to her. Her email is in the chat, and I will also follow up with her email, as well as books for you all to check out for your kiddos tomorrow. You'll see that in your inbox. Thank you so much for
Do
participating.
you have
Thank
the
you so
Carol
much, Carol.
Musher? Do you have the Carol Musher Gmail? Is that what you have?
Carol Musher at
Okay, perfect,
Gmail.
perfect, perfect.
Yes.
Okay,
Carol
all
Musher
right.
at
Have a
Gmail
nice
is her
rest of the
info.
evening. Go
Yes.
read to
Thank
your
you all so
kids.
much.
Go
Go
read to your
read.
kids, or
Ha-
sing songs to them in the bathtub.
Have a
Whatever.
wonderful
Just
evening.
have fun with them. Time passes quickly, I promise.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a great
Okay.
evening.
All right.